Okay, welcome everybody. So first off, I'd like to acknowledge that the land that we know as Alberta resides on treaties 6, 7, and 8, as well as portions of treaties 4 and 10, and is the ancestral and traditional territory of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We have a responsibility to care for these lands and waters and to honor the history and culture of those who have been here for generations. And now I'd like to present our speaker tonight. We have Olivia deBourcier, who is an entomologist, illustrator, and science communicator based out of Edmonton, Alberta. She is currently completing her master's degree at the University of Alberta, where she studies aquatic insects. Olivia loves to share what she learns about sea creatures, fossils, and insects on her family-friendly science podcast, Beyond Blathers, which is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And with that, I will mute myself and turn it over to Olivia.
All right. Hi, everyone. As Nick said, I'm Olivia. I'm an entomologist, which means I study insects, and I specialize in aquatic insects. I actually am just finally defending my master's thesis next week, so it's been a busy holiday season. So I'm so excited to be here doing what I really love to do, which is just talk about bugs and nature and things like that. So today we're going to be talking about bugs and we're going to be drawing them as well. So make sure you've got a pencil and some paper. Pen works too. I personally prefer pencil just so I can sketch a whole bunch and erase what I need. But yeah, we're gonna start. I'm just gonna share my screen here, and there we go. Okay, so and everyone can see that just fine. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, what does an entomologist do? Well, we do a whole bunch of different things. Here in Alberta, a lot of cool pollinator research happens. That's what most of my lab does, and that's what you can see pictured here. Us sitting in the grass, looking for pollinators as they come and touch down on flowers. And on the right there is a photo of me with my study group, which are water boatmen or carixids. And they're a really cool aquatic bug that migrate out of the North Saskatchewan River. And this is a bucket of water boatmen that we were able to collect, not with minimal difficulty when they're migrating out of the river. And so it's a very fun job, lots of cool adventures, and I'm more than happy to talk about it more during the question period. But for now, we're going to be talking about all the amazing, well, not all, four bugs in Alberta that I'm particularly fond of. And starting with one that I really hope people have seen, but maybe you haven't. It's called the Polyphemus moth. Now, this moth is enormous, and I have a specimen here for you to look at. So you can kind of get a sense of size here. So I've got my little lamp here, and let's see if my camera will focus. So it's a very large moth. I know my screen is probably fairly small there, but what's really cool about it is that it has these transparent, hello, focus, transparent holes on the wings. And those are sort of the eye spots there. And this particular specimen is a male and has enormous fluffy antennae that we're going to get to draw here. And so it's a very fluffy little guy. I don't know. My favorite is its face. Oh, it's going to focus on my face. There we go. And there's the photo there of how cute their little faces are. These particular moths aren't terribly uncommon in the city. It's just that we don't usually see them because they're out at night, as many moths are. And this is a photo of my friend Leah. She studies butterflies, but we went out to try and find some of these amazing moths when they were in really high populations a couple summers ago. And a technique we used is one that you can use at home as well. It's a light trap, and I've got a photo of it over here. It's very high tech. It is a white sheet pinned up in some manner with clothespins or whatever, and then you shine a light on it. Ideal, like if you can, a black light, but any light works, and it attracts various nighttime creepy crawlies, including some beautiful moths. So in the summer, if you'd like to try this, I highly recommend it. It's very fun, and you can find some really cool insects like this moth. So I think let's start drawing. But before we do this, I want to talk about some little drawing tips before we get started. The first one is a tip I give everyone when we're drawing, and that is to think in shapes. And what I mean by this is I'm going to guide you through the process of drawing by saying, draw a circle, draw an oval, draw a circle. And that's just sort of to sketch out some marks and build off of those shapes. So hopefully that'll help you go through this whole process. These are what we're going to be drawing today. The other thing is to draw light marks first. So that tends to help build on your drawing, especially if you draw a line that isn't quite perfect. Well, it's nice and light so you can correct it when you go over your drawing again. And also to be imperfect. Don't worry too much if this isn't a perfect image, if it's not a perfect drawing. We're having fun here, and you can always try again later. So don't stress too much if it's not exactly perfect. Okay, so to start, here's my screen. So you should be able to see everything that I'm drawing here. And we're gonna start, if this is your sheet of paper, the thing we need to remember is with this moth, its body is very small relative to its wings. So we're gonna start with the body, and it's gonna be quite small. So first thing is we're gonna draw a little circle right in the center of the page there, and below it, a slightly bigger oval. And that's going to be the base for our body. I probably could have started a little bit later there, but that's okay. And you're going to connect those. So you're going to have this sort of bean shape. And we're going to draw the head now. The head we're drawing this moth from top down. So you can't really see its head so well. It's sort of tucked in there. We're going to give this shape a little hat, a little triangle, and that's going to be the head. If you want, you can draw in some little eyes there. Up to you. And that strange little shape is going to be our moth's body. This is a very fluffy body, so I like to add some little fluffs right at the bottom along the abdomen. But we can add more fluffiness later on. Okay, next step. Our moth needs some antenna. This is going to be a male moth. So we're going to make some nice, big, fluffy antenna. The male moths, they really need to be able to find females. And in order to do that, they have to be able to smell the pheromones that she's giving out with their huge antenna. So here, we're going to basically draw two leaves or two feathers, because that's what shape they are. And give them some little lines here, a little bit of texture. There we go. And adjust those later on. Beep, beep. All right. And now, of course, we've got to do the wings. Now, this is a bit of a tricky shape, so I can't really describe it. I'll just have to show you. We're going to do that sort of shape, this sort of just butterfly wing shape. And it's very difficult to get these looking exactly equal on either side. So I'm going to use a digital art trick. You might just have to have patience. There we go. So there are 4 wings, as we call them, and our hind wings. So I'm going to have them meet up right in the center in this sort of display pose, as we call it. There we go. And some hind wings. So the wings are kind of marked out there for us. And the next thing I want to do is draw in the eye spots of the moth. So the eye spots are just those big circles you see on these. I'll show you. I can go back to the photo. Those big round spots. So we've got 2 of them, one here and one here. Nice big circles. And this is where you get that cool transparent spot as well, so you can add that in. And I'm going to add another circle around it that's a little bit bigger. So we have this sort of very circular pattern going on. And I'm doing this pretty quickly, so it's going to be a little bit rough. That's okay. I'm going to thicken this middle circle a little bit. There we are. And the cool thing about these moths is that kind of part of the reason they have their name is that the name Polyphemus, and I might be pronouncing that incorrectly, is a cyclops of Greek mythology. And so I guess it's sort of referring to the eye spots on their wings, even though there's two of them. When these moths are settled, like they're just hanging out on a tree, they have their wings folded, and if they are startled by a predator like a bird or something, they can flash it open and startle whatever the thing is that's bothered them with these big eyes that make it look like some sort of animal that's much bigger than it is. So there's a couple eye spots. They also have some spots right on the wing here. There we are. So we're going to draw those as well. And I'm going to make those like this. I kind of like doing a bit of a rough edge for these circles because the way that the scales on the wings form, they often give sort of this ruffled edge to any of the patterns on the wings. And we also have a couple lines that go down. This is when there's a bit of a division of color, the forewings and the hind wings. There we go. And I'm gonna just add a little bit of dark coloring here because there's a bit of a black mark that goes up and down the forewings and the hind wings. If you have, colors, you can use those. I'm just going to stick to black and white for now. All right. And we also have sort of a darker marking over here as well. This is a really fluffy moth, so I don't mind using the squiggly lines because to me it just adds texture. And there we are. They do have veins in their wings to help strengthen them so that when they fly, when they fly, they look like bats. It's kind of amazing. So I'm going to draw some of these veins in here. I'm not going to draw them all the way across because they don't tend to have very prominent veins. They're kind of, you just sort of see them on the edge. And there's a bit of a black spot on the tip here. There we are. Now, what we're really missing here is the wonderful fluffiness around the body. So I'm going to make it nice and fluffy. There we go. You can create this sort of W shape. That's what I like to do to make things look fluffy. You could also add hairs if you want. So I'll show you, for example, you could go like this down the wing. You can do this all over the entire wing if you'd like. I think for now, because we don't have too much time, we're just going to give a slight impression of fluffiness. And I'm going to go over some of the lines again, tighten them up, make them slightly less sketchy. There we are. Also give time for people to catch up if you're still on a different part of the moth. There we are. What I think is amazing about these moths is that they don't really have mouth parts to eat as adults. Their whole purpose is to find a mate. And I think that's pretty cool. So they just, they have to eat all their food as larvae. There we go. So there's our Polyphemus moth. Mine is a little bit wonky because I'm drawing it at an angle, but whatever, we're being imperfect today. So there we go. Time to move on to our next critter here, which is one of my favorites, the tiger beetle. This is an insect that a lot of people don't know about, but I think is amazing. It is something you can find a lot in sort of deserty, sandy environments. You can find a lot in the Edmonton River Valley in sandy areas, especially southern Alberta. They're quite abundant and they are extremely fast. If you look at this beetle, they've got very long legs, these huge eyes because they're predators and they're running after their food. And my favorite thing about them is their antenna. And their antenna sort of act as bumpers in front of them because they move so quickly that they're at risk of running into things. So they need those antennae to sort of give them a little bit of a heads up before they're about to smash into a wall. Their speed is such that if they were the size of like a an actual tiger, they would be breaking the speed of sound. They're extremely fast. So it makes them kind of difficult to catch, but not impossible. So if you have an aerial net and you're looking around at dunes, you might be lucky enough to catch one of these. They're kind of dependably in sandy areas where they create their burrows and hang out. So I wanted to draw the face of a tiger beetle because I think their faces are so cool and intense looking. So to start, we are going to create, I call this the hamburger shape. It's essentially an oval, but kind of smushed on the top. So make your little hamburger. I made this very small, so I'm just going to zoom in. And we're going to create a little cross. Now do this very lightly, a light-handed mark here. And those are going to kind of help us guide us through this drawing. And right below, oops, we're going to create 2 lines, not quite at the edge of the circle, but a little bit in. You're going to kind of have that stick out, and then we're going to create a curve. And this can be bumpy too, actually. This is what we call the clypeus of the beetle. It's sort of the front bit of the mouth. There we go. And I like to create the eyes next just to give us a nice sense of the face. The eyes are going to be really big, so they're going to come out like this, big ovals. Super big. There we go. Awesome. Got our 2 big circles there. If you have an eraser, oop, whoops, you can erase, but we're going to fill these in anyway. So there we go. There's our eyes. And next, we have to create the mandibles of the tiger beetle. Now, the mandibles on the tiger beetle cross over each other. It's a good identifying feature. And they kind of look like these big daggers. So we're going to draw the big daggers like this. You can let them cross. If you have time, you can even make them kind of jagged. Very scary looking. I'm very glad I'm not an insect prey item of the tiger beetle. I think they'd make a pretty formidable predator. Next, I want to move on to the antenna. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. And we're going to create 2 little kind of hot dog shapes in the middle of the forehead. The antenna come out from sort of between the eyes. And, as we saw in the photos, the antenna really comes straight out. But because we're just doing a drawing here, I'm going to make them go up and out just for dramatic effect and so that we can really see those nice long antennae. There we are. These are kind of hard to draw quickly. Good enough. They're a little uneven, but we can pretend one's kind of sticking forward a little bit more than the other. And then I'm going to give them some segments here. Voila. All right, I'm going to zoom back into, I'm going to add a little bit of darkening on the tips of the mandibles here, because usually you see that in tiger beetles. And I have to add some extra mouth parts here. So I'm making these like kind of, they look like extra antennae hanging next to the mouth. I'm going to add some pits here, some little details just to add a little bit of life to our tiger beetle. And then comes my favorite part, the eyes. The way I like to draw eyes is I like to create a nice little reflection. So I make jelly bean shapes on the eyes. And to make them look kind of cute, I usually put them kind of towards the center of the face, and it makes them look a little cross-eyed, which I think is cute. So you can do that if you'd like. And then you fill in those eyes. Oh, see, I'm using digital shortcuts. I mostly draw digitally, so I need to, pretend I'm using an actual pencil and paper here. There we go, color in the eyes. And there we have our tiger beetle head. Now, the cool thing about tiger beetles is often they have an iridescence to them. They're very shiny sometimes and come in all sorts of different colors and patterns. So if you have pencil crayons or something, I highly recommend doing some iridescent colors on these amazing beetles because they're quite fun. And how am I doing in terms of speed? Do people need me to slow down a little bit? I'll take, Nick, if anyone's saying in the chat, I can't actually see the chat right now. But
no messages in the chat yet.
Okay.
But I myself am keeping up. But if anybody needs the pace to slow down a bit, feel free to pop that into the chat and we can accommodate.
I don't want to leave anyone behind, but I'd also like us to be able to draw 4 insects ideally here. All right. Well, moving on to our next insect, we have the giant water bug. Now, 9 times out of 10, when I get a photo from someone saying, "What is this?" I know it's going to be a giant water bug. And so I open it up, and sure enough, it's this creature. Now, I have one here.
Sorry, Olivia, just to interrupt
Oh,
real quick. We've had a couple of requests, just maybe slow it down just a little tiny bit.
I can do that 100%. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for telling me. I had a feeling that it's hard when I can't see people's drawings. So I will slow it down for you guys. So here we have a giant water bug. This one is pinned with its wings out. So you can see it does fly. And as its name suggests, it is an aquatic insect, a true bug as we call them. And the thing with these is that they have a nasty little nickname called toe biters. And it is a little appropriate because they do tend to be found in lakes and rivers and creeks where, you know, if you're walking around barefoot, you might end up getting bit by one. They're not venomous, but they do excrete a digestive enzyme into their prey, which, you know, your toe isn't prey, but it still hurts. But for an insect, prey, when this thing bites you, it basically turns the inside of its prey into a smoothie and slurps it up through this tooth, which you can see in the photo on the left. It's got its head with the eyes and then this sort of like triangular bit sticking out. And so that's basically the straw that it's using to eat. It's a really creepy looking creature. A lot of the time people mistake them for cockroaches because what can happen is they are flying around at night and they see a bright light and they're attracted to it and they get kind of lost and they're sitting in the middle of a sidewalk. So you might not find them near a pond or a lake. You might just find them on your patio or wherever. In which case I do not recommend picking them up even if they look dead because they aren't sometimes known to play dead and even excrete kind of a bad smell to really seem dead, and then they are not in fact dead. So really interesting creatures here. And we're going to draw them at a slightly slower pace here. So to start off, I want to draw this insect swimming. So I'm going to do it on a bit of a diagonal. We're going to start with a sort of oval, long oval shape. So we're going to do a long oval shape here. And I'm going to do a very light line down the center just to tell me where the halfway point is, because I want to know what a quarter of the way down is. And a quarter of the way down this oval, I'm going to draw a line like that. And this is going to be sort of the division of body parts. I mentioned that this giant water bug is what we call a true bug. That's its group as an insect, a heteropteran. And oftentimes they have this X on their back, the way that their wings fold. Sorry, I've shifted my, there we go. So we're going to create an X. And on the very end of its body here, we're going to create a bit of a triangle. So we're actually going to change the shape to have a nice little taper on the end, like that. Now we've got our wings nice and folded. I'm going to create a little wing here. So this here is more of a guideline. We can erase that. And usually its wing kind of folds in like that. And I'm going to give it some wing veins here because usually you can kind of see that texture when they're pinned. They also have some muscle right up at the top here that I'm going to indicate with some lines. So this is the body of our giant water bug. I should mention that this is a global group. There's many different species all around the world. And in some places, they're actually eaten. And so, you know, that's kind of a cool thing that maybe if you travel, you might encounter. So I'm going to start drawing its head here. To do that, I'm going to create a kind of a triangle, a soft triangle shape here. I'm gonna do it pretty lightly because we're gonna draw the eyes. And similar to with the tiger beetle, the giant water bug also has fairly large eyes. Those eyes are gonna be big ovals like that. And they're gonna do this whole triangle shape. Actually, I made those a bit big. I'm just gonna boop, do that instead. And use my eraser and erase this line a little bit. For some reason, this head is looking a little wonky for me. I'm just gonna move it a tiny little bit. There we go. That's better. Okay, so we've got the eyes. I'm gonna make some pupils now. I'm gonna make this one pretty cartoony because I find giant water bugs to be genuinely a little bit frightening. Normally, I find them pretty creepy. I'm fascinated by them, but they're one of those creatures where I had one pinned on my desk at the U of A for a while, and I had to put it away at one point because it would give me the heebie-jeebies, which doesn't happen often as someone who works with insects. I get pretty used to them. Boy, I've drawn some funky looking eyes here. That's okay. All right, so there we've got most of our water bug done. We've got to create the arms though. They have these beefy arms to grab onto their prey. So I'm gonna create, I don't even know what this shape could be called, but those are the arms. And this particular water bug is going to be grabbing some prey. Now, they'll eat mostly other water bugs, but they will also catch fish, tadpoles, frogs, and in some countries, they've even been reported eating turtles and ducklings. So that's pretty fearsome. It's definitely not their preferred food item, I would imagine, largely because the digestive enzymes that they put into their prey digest things with vertebrae worse than invertebrates, so other bugs. So it's not ideal, but it does happen. Certainly not ideal for the turtles. I'm going to draw a little fish here, though. I'm going to pretend he's eating a fish. So you can draw whatever you'd like your water bug to be eating. We can have a little, we can see what everyone draws. Here's my little sad minnow, unfortunately caught. There we go. All right. Oh, and of course, we need that tooth. There we go. Little triangle. And now the problem with this water bug is it only has 2 legs. We need 4 more legs. So I'm going to create, actually, I'm going to put this up here, these sort of hot dog shapes, and a long triangle. This is my shortcut to drawing bug legs. Hot dogs and long triangles, and some little claws on the end. I will say over here, these are little claws as well, and they really do just look like little hooks that they use to grab their prey. And we got to add back 2 legs. And those long triangles again. And our claws. There we go. Now I am going to add these little sort of D shapes as well, because that's something you tend to see on their backs, just a little bit more texture. Okay, now on the back, we're going to add this shape here. It is a snorkel, essentially, that they use. So I'm going to show you this photo. Sorry, I'm going to move. The photo on the right, you can see that it's poking its butt out of the water, and that's because it's using the snorkel to take air and sort of funnel it down under its wings, where it has what we call spiracles. And they're basically little holes in their body that help them to absorb air. So it can kind of just hang out underwater and have this snorkel sticking out there, which I think is super cool. And ooh, there we go. I'm gonna add some little bubbles coming out. Just for fun, let's pretend it's swimming. And there's some bubbles around it. There we go. Am I missing anything? Let me look at my photo here. I could add some more lines here, some more wing veins showing through. And there we go. Now we have our giant water bug. And hopefully now you know what a giant water bug is if you didn't already. So be warned, but also be intrigued because they're super fun and super cool. I will say I've handled a number of them and never been bit. So I don't know, no guarantees, but you can find them pond dipping if you're lucky. If you want to know a pretty dependable way to trap them, I can talk about that later in the question period. All right, on to not an insect, but what I think is possibly the most charming little creature that we can find here in Alberta. This is a bold jumping spider. If you've been fortunate enough to find a jumping spider, you may have noticed that they are so curious looking because they'll look at you. They've got these huge eyes that they just track movement so well that if you kind of move around, they'll follow you. They have these very endearing courtship dances where they basically look like they're dancing around in front of one another. And they're just really interesting. As you can see that in this middle photo, I've chosen a lot of predators for this talk. It's a very good predator. This tiny little spiderling, little baby spider, has caught an enormous fruit fly. And this is pretty impressive for a little guy like that. The way that they hunt is they'll run around. They don't create webs. They look with those big eyes. And once they find prey and they get close enough, they'll attach their web to the ground as sort of like anchor line, and then they'll leap. And they're able to catch prey that way and sort of have a safety net so that when they sort of bungee jump off of a leaf or something to catch their prey, they don't fall to their doom. So they're really amazing little animals. I wanted to draw a super cute jumping spider today. So to start, we are going to start again with a bit of a hamburger shape here. There we go. And again, we're going to draw our very faint cross through the middle here. Once you've done that, I'm going to sort of adjust this shape and give it a bit of a point on the sides. They kind of have angular heads. So it's a bit more of this sort of octagon, or is it an octagon? Just a different shape. And I'm going to erase those lines there. So now we've got the head of our jumping spider. Okay, so right at this middle line, we're going to create two big ovals, like this, and they're going to point together like that. And those are going to be our chelicerae. They are the fangy bits on the spider, which means that they need little fangs. There we go. So jumping spiders do have venom. They need to in order to actually kill their prey properly. As we said before, their prey are very, very big. So they need a little bit of venom. Now, they are not, the ones in Alberta are not going to hurt you as a human. At worst, maybe a large jumping spider is like that big, and maybe you'd feel a pinch, but I have not heard of them being particularly bitey. And a lot of the time people will handle them because they jump between your hands and they're quite cute. Fun to watch. Sorry, I should have said I'm drawing the eyes now. Two big eyes right in the center of the face. And we need some cute reflections here. So I'm going to draw a couple of circles in the middle. And those are going to be the reflections on the eye. And color in everything around those circles. I think I was just really drawn to bugs with large eyes today. And I'm just going to erase some extra lines here. Clean up the drawing tiny bit. I suppose some jumping spiders have rather square heads, but we're going to make ours a little bit of this round shape. Okay, now spiders don't just have two eyes, they have 8. So a couple of eyes here on the side of their head. We're not going to draw all the eyes because you wouldn't be able to see all the eyes on this particular individual, but a couple little lumps on the side of the head where the eyes would be, because they kind of have this rounded 360 vision. Perhaps not quite 360, but you get what I mean. It's all around their head. All right, now we have the pedipalps. These are 4 ovals that we're going to draw right next to their face, kind of like this. They're able to manipulate their prey with these. There we are. So they're not legs, but they do kind of look like legs. And we also need a body behind it. So I'm going to create this sort of semicircle right behind the head. This is going to be the body sort of fading off into the background. And now we have most of our jumping spider. We just need the legs. Now for the legs, you could go a few different directions. You could go very realistic and make them a little bit spiky, or you can do what I prefer to do, which is make them into basically big pool noodles, just because I think it's adorable. And I think that spiders need a little bit of cute I think people need to see them as more cute and less terrifying for their personal brand. Here we go. So we're going to create 3 of these pool noodles plus a little lump on the corner there where the 4th set of legs would be going off into the background. Like that. Because spiders have 8 legs. So we need to make sure we get them all. So those are my pool noodle legs. It's a pretty cartoony spider. You can make them spikier if you'd like. Now is my favorite part. See, jumping spiders have all this little furriness about them. So we need to add fur to our jumping spider. So I'm going to give it some little hairs on the top of its head. I'm going to create kind of a puffiness right on the cheeks. Oh, if you have coloring crayons, you can make this area here green or iridescent. A lot of the time, the males will have very pretty colors right there. I'm going to add a little bit of fluffiness right on its body as well, and on the legs. There we go. I had a pet jumping spider for a while. It was very fun. Another cool thing about jumping spiders is they can produce silk, as I said before, and they'll make themselves sort of little sleeping bags to sleep in. And I think that just makes them all the more endearing. Such little characters. You'll really just find them kind of randomly. I remember once when I had the jumping spider, I woke up one morning and I rolled over, and right on my dresser, there was a little jumping spider just looking at me. And I was like, oh, my jumping spider escaped. But no, it was just a random mystery jumping spider that had appeared of the same species. So that was kind of funny, or at least a similar enough species. It was pretty confusing. So who knows how we got there. All right, oh, I'm gonna make a few little hairs on his bum there. Perfect. So now you have your jumping spider. I'll leave it up there so that folks can catch up, add hairs to their little creature here. But that is our 4th drawing. And that brings us to the end of my planned drawings for us all. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a little bit about insects in the process. And I hope that once the snow melts, we can all go and look for insects. But if you are too impatient, there are plenty of winter bugs that can also be found. So especially when it's warm like this, all sorts of things tend to be flying around. So thank you again. And we can talk about questions or anything you'd like to ask.
Oh.